long been the home of Indigenous peoples. Not far from where we're meeting is Tabor Hill, a Wyandot or Huron burial mound. There are the remains of an Iroquoian village site at Brimley Road, where it crosses West Highland Creek, and another large Huron-Wendat village site is north of Lemuro Park. Today, Toronto is home to diverse communities of Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis people. Many generations of people from around the world have come to this land, and many people continue to arrive and are welcomed. So this acknowledgement of this land is not just words. A land acknowledgement is a commitment to care for this land and for the people who live on it. The councillor that we will elect will have an important role in the caring for this land, for the people who live and work on it, and this relationship with the Indigenous peoples of this place. So we make this land acknowledgement tonight, knowing that it shapes who we vote for and how they'll work.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Parkinson. I'm with the Scarborough United Neighbourhoods. We are a nonpartisan collaborative group surrounding 30 community residential groups in Scarborough. Our mission is to share information which raises awareness for community events and also civic matters. One of our projects we're doing right now, obviously we're here tonight and we appreciate your attendance, is the by-election project. We've been promoting and sharing information for eligible voters so they can make an informed vote. We provided a candidates report, introduced the marketplace, collaborated with other groups, and recorded some of the 4 candidates events that we've had as of today. This was also possible, was not possible without the support from our local media and the company, The Loco, that's put out the 23 bios on the candidates that are currently in this race. The candidates are working hard for your vote, and each of us are key to encouraging our friends, family, and businesses to vote. For those who wish to learn about Sun, you can check out our Facebook. As volunteers, we'd like to thank the candidates for participating, especially you, the audience, who are ultimately deciding on the candidate for the next councillor for 2020, Ward 20 at Scarborough Southwest. I want to also thank SCAN, West Scarborough Community Centre as well. Thank you guys for all your help. Thank you and have a great night.
Four candidates.
I had a job too. I'd just like to introduce the moderator for tonight. Peter Haggard, to my right here, is director of Haggard Media Group. He's moderated dozens of candidate sessions and political panels during his 30-year career, editing daily and community newspapers across Canada. He currently is on contract with Google, teaching news websites how to grow their audience and online revenue. He is the past president of Scarborough Business Association and is currently on the steering committee of the Scarborough Walk of Fame. Welcome, Peter, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, this should be fun. What do you think? Who wants to think of the right questions? This is a great night, and Jonathan alluded to it. This is great, and this doesn't work unless there's the interest of folks like yourself. And we appreciate you taking the time tonight and to the other all-candidates forums that have been held during this by-election. Because it's a by-election, it also means more prominence for Scarborough. More people are listening to the opinions in Scarborough. More people are hearing what you, the candidates, have to say. And that's wonderful. It's been a really good year for promotion and for information about Scarborough getting out there. It's due to you folks. It's due to groups like Ron and the 30 other organizations who help with that. I know tonight a lot of work went into this organization, and Jonathan and Ron and others. It was a great. They've worked hard on this, so I'm going to do my best to keep this flowing and to make sure this is a night where we get a lot of information on the table. This isn't going to be a finger-pointing session. This isn't going to be, you have to keep your suits on. There's going to be no fights or brawls.
Sure.
And that goes the same for you. I think the key word tonight is respect. And I will be introducing, there's I think 5 different sections for tonight's event, all asking different questions in different ways that different candidates might be able to best respond to. So again, we want to get as much information out on the table, and we're going to start tonight. Oh, first I do have a couple of things I do need to do as well, and I apologize for not doing this yet. I need to have a couple of thank yous as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, please be aware that tonight's meeting is going to be streamed and recorded, and it will be shared in the next few days. So it will be out there. So anything that happens tonight, you will see. Again, the respect word is a big one here. We're grateful to the City of Toronto and Oakridge Community Centre for providing this space and supporting the event in other ways. It's all about community getting together, and that's you can't beat it. We also extend our gratitude to all the volunteers putting this together. Thank you in person and to our online audience as well. And the candidates, of course. I know this is a big commitment this late in the race, and we respect and we appreciate your time, and hopefully this will be a good night for you all. So there's different things. I talk about respect, and there's some real basic rules that we're going to ask of you. One person to speak at a time. We don't want to get in a situation where people are speaking over other people. That's just a waste of time, and we don't want that to happen. We don't want you to talk about each other. Talk about your platform. I don't care if you don't like whatever, I want to hear what you have to say and what you're going to do for every person in the audience here. That's the important part about tonight. We have a timekeeper in front of us here. Just raise your flags there. And different portions will have different periods of time allotted to it. Now, when you come close to the allotment, and I'll share the allotment as we get into different sections, he will raise the yellow flag, which means left. Did that very well, excellent. And then when you're out of time, you're going to have a red flag, and then I wish we had the sound effect, something like that. But you will find that I won't let you off the hook, and I'll get loud and obnoxious if you continue talking. So don't think you'll get away with it. I've done too many of these. So for the very start, we're going to have the four of you who just drew, as you know, for speaking order. You're going to have 3 minutes to give your opening statements. And by the way, for everyone, at the end of the evening, they'll each have 1 minute for closing remarks, and they'll speak in the opposite order that they start with this evening. So we're going to start on the end with, I should introduce the candidates, actually. That would be a good idea. So we have Malik, Ahmad, and Kevin Rupasinghe, and Parthi, Kandavel, and Suman Roy. Thank you again for being here this evening. Very good. So not to take up more time with this preliminary stuff, I want to hear what you have to say. So Malik, you have 3 minutes, I believe. Does this reach? Yeah. Okay, this should be able to reach to you.
Should I just come over on that side, or
No, whichever you prefer.
whichever works? Good evening, everyone. First of all, I wanted to start off by thanking Ron and his team and other volunteers for organizing this amazing evening. And I also wanted to thank the candidates here for putting their hard work, like myself, and they believe in a better Scarborough Southwest. So I want to thank them as well in the beginning. About myself, my name is Malik Ahmad. I'm a founder of the Indian International Film Festival. I've ran in 2010 in Scarborough Southwest. This is where I have been living. I've been involved in all three levels of political levels as a volunteer, and I've worked with the different. Yes, so I've worked with all three levels of government in different capacities. I've worked and promoted children, youth, seniors, and I believe in doing something for our seniors and our youth and our business community. I run an IT services and cybersecurity software company from downtown, and my other passion is films and arts and culture. So I'm a big believer in that because that helps in creating a vibrant community no matter where you go. And Toronto, as you know, 3 million people. We are a leader in technology, finance, films, arts, culture. And I would like to promote that in our community to the best I can. And I would also like to bring corporate businesses to our area so that people can work here and they don't have to go downtown like myself to do our business. So that's a few items that are on my agenda apart from housing and affordability. The reason why I'm running, when I came to Canada, you can buy a house for $300,000. Now it's out of reach. Even for myself, to own $1 million house, I don't qualify. So imagine what's going to happen with our kids. What's going to happen when they graduate from universities, colleges. You may have already heard people are moving out of the city. Why? Because the housing affordability has gone crazy. The cost of living has gone, people have to decide if they're paying their rents or if they can put food on the table. So that's basically the reason that I'm running, and I would like to work with you and the residents to make Scarborough Southwest a better place for everyone, for our kids, our seniors, and for our future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Malik. Kevin?
It's 3 minutes, right?
Yep.
Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. It's having a bit of deja vu. We've had a few of these meetings now, but it's great to see so many engaged folks out. And thank you to all the candidates and, of course, all the organizers. I know it's a lot of work to put these things together. So my name is Kevin Rupasinghe. I live in the community with my partner. She and I love it here. We want to raise our family here. We live in Cliffside, and we love Scarborough. We love everything about it. All the people, the businesses, the food, the nature. There's so many things about our community that are fantastic. And part of why I'm running is because, despite those things, I think a lot of us are still feeling stuck. As mentioned, people are choosing between keeping a roof over their head and food on the table. It doesn't matter if your name's on a mortgage or on a lease these days. People are feeling stuck, and it's a shame because this is a phenomenal city. I love the city. And when my parents immigrated here, it was so that my sister and I could have a better life. And there was an optimism that they had back then that I don't think people are quite feeling these days. And I know we can do better. It doesn't have to be a city where people can't actually afford to keep a roof over their heads. It doesn't have to be a city where it's so hard for people to get around to work or to school. And this needs to be a city where people feel safe in their communities, at school, or at work. And I think all of this is possible. Part of how I ended up deciding to run was, my background is actually in cities engineering. So looking at things like transportation, how do you use your land? How do you make sure that we have the infrastructure and the resilience that we need as we move forward? And how do we make sure this is a livable and sustainable city? So that's what I do professionally. I work in transportation. That's my day job. But I used to do a lot of community advocacy, pushing for things like safer streets and better transit, because I'm sure you all know there's a lot of dangerous driving in Scarborough, and people get injured and killed in collisions all the time. And the city will wait until someone is killed before they even start trying to make a difference, which is totally unacceptable. I mean, I've worked with families who've lost loved ones, and it is awful. And these are almost always preventable, and these are things in the city's control. And of course, transit, we've totally dropped the ball on in Scarborough for decades. And so I've been very outspoken in our community, worked with many community members. I've been in and out of City Hall as a community member from the outside, pushing for these issues to be addressed. And over time, I've realized I can do as much through my professional work in engineering, and I can do as much community organizing, but if we don't have the political leadership, we're never going to move forward on these issues and the whole host of others that the city is facing. And that's part of what's made me decide to run. We have a rare opportunity right now with an open seat to decide that, you know what, we need a new generation of leadership, because the same thinking and the same style of leadership that got us to this point, that's not going to be what gets us forward. It's a rare chance that a community has to say, you know what, we want to think about the future, and that's part of why I'm running here, is because I'm thinking about what's the next 10, 20 years, 30 years of Scarborough going to look like. We need to make those decisions today, and that's part of why I'm running. So I hope we can build a better future together. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Parthi.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. Thank you to Sun for organizing this, and to the candidates that I've gotten to know through the last couple of months. I just want to give them a shout out and appreciate their participation and attendance here. So I'll get started. More than 35 years ago, my family chose Scarborough Junction, in fact, as our home, and I couldn't be more grateful. I often think back of my time going to school here, getting my first shot as a teacher at Johnny Leslie in Cliffside and Regent Heights in Clare Lee, and now raising my daughter here with my wonderful wife, Anu, here in Oakridge, in fact. And Scarborough, as many can attest, has changed a lot since I was my daughter's age, and continues to change at a rapid pace, despite the fact that the people who live here haven't been consulted or meaningfully involved. Evictions, for example, are on the rise. We see inappropriate rezoning, like our beloved Sun Valley, no different than the Greenbelt scandal, which saw us lose an iconic grocery store. I'm reminded also of my time battling the eviction of Lenmore Court. When the proposal was first drafted, we were quite upset, knowing full well that children would lose important relationships with friends and caring teachers, which is precisely why I fought so hard as the school trustee with the Birchcliff Residents Association to have the proposal shut down. We lost that battle, and now the innocent residents of Lenmore Court are being uprooted from their homes. Soon, there'll be 12 stories casting a shadow over Birchcliff. Lenmore is our canary in the coal mine, and sadly, this will not be the last eviction we see here. We have seen historic immigration the last couple of years. There's absolutely no question we have to build housing. And let me share, we are not against all development. We are against bad development. We need housing that prioritizes livable, walkable, functional communities that are affordable. Development that leaves our communities better off. And this is why we need a strong voice at City Hall. I have that strong and independent voice. It's why my former 21 colleagues on the Toronto District School Board trusted me with being the chair from 2020, chair of the budget for 3 years, knowing I would treat all neighborhoods in our vast city the same as I would my own. It's also why they elected me to be the chair of the single most important decision the Board of Trustees makes every 5 years, the hiring of our one employee, the Director of Education. In my 8 years as your trustee, I've learned how to listen to you, move effective motions, and further our local interests. This is not the time for on-the-job training. I'm the only candidate with elected experience that allow me to start the job on day one. Thank you.
All right, Suman.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Suman, and I'm running to be your next councillor for Scarborough Southwest. We are in a very crucial time, as we heard from some of my colleagues, that we are in a very crucial time to decide what is this community going to look like for your children, your grandchildren. On 30th of November, we will make that decision. We are going to figure out who is the right person to lead this community, and what kind of leadership style is actually needed to have a proper Scarborough Southwest that's going to thrive. In those who don't know, in Scarborough Southwest, in the beginning of pandemic, when this community was hurting, I started an organization called Feed Scarborough. And currently we serve 7,500 people. I'm also the board chair for Scarborough Arts, where we have actively in the last 5 years advocated for equitable arts all across Scarborough. With the community policing, I'm also a member of the Community Police Liaison Committee, where we have looked at safety and the root causes that we have in our community that's going to prevent any more crime to happen. We need a councillor who has demonstrated their work in this community. And I have shown, just as a regular citizen, as a regular community member, what I have done in this community. We need a councillor who can, on 1st of December, can walk up to City Hall and get the ball rolling right away. This is my second term currently as a Board of Health member at City Hall. My first term was 2011 to 2015, where I actively, of course with many other profiles, my active profile was student nutrition, breakfast and lunch program in schools. Where when I took over, we had a $9 million budget for that program, where I actively engaged and negotiated with the province to allocate $30 million more every year for that program. I've got the experience of negotiating with the province, negotiating with the federal government on bringing support to our city. And with that, I feel I'm the best candidate with a community experience, with a City Hall experience, who can hit the ground running and have demonstrated that they are a part of this community. I live in Oakridge right here with my family. My daughter goes to Clearly Public School, and where I've realized how safety is important. But more than anything, one of the things that I strongly believe in is I am just one person living in this community, and it really doesn't matter what I believe in. It really matters what you as a community believes in, because you will decide who's the next councillor and pay our paycheck. Thank you.
Thank you, Suman. Well, thank you. We've got 4 great candidates here, and I look forward to hearing more from them. They did very well in that area. So what are the big advantages of having community organizations put on a forum like this is they have access to the people. And I know it was a big priority for everyone to have questions asked of the candidates. They're the questions that you folks want to know the answers to. So many of the questions that you hear tonight were molded out of community groups who asked their members for feedback on what they want to hear from the councillors. And this next section is no exception to that. This next section, it's something a little bit different we're going to try, and it's each councillor, how's that sound, guys? Each candidate will be asked a question, and they'll give a specific question to them. They'll be given 3 minutes to respond. After that, we'll have a little bit of a discussion. Now, as I mentioned before, we can do this 2 ways. If you guys can play nice, we'll just let you discuss and, give little bit clips after the 3 minutes with your views. If not, I'll just have to say you go first, you go second. But I'd rather we just have a nice informal conversation. So let's try that. So now with the, and one other thing I'd just like to say, while photos are great, and take all the photos and recordings you want, please make sure that you don't have your phone turned on or ringtones or any noises like that, which could disrupt the person sitting next to you, just out of respect. Thank you very much. Okay, so now for this next section, I'm going to start with Kevin, and here's your question, Kevin. You have 3 minutes. Sounds like a game show. As councillor, in what ways would you work with the city to create more economic opportunities and jobs in Scarborough Southwest? Excellent. We'll get used to this.
Do you mind just repeating the question?
Sure. Let's see if I can see it. As councillor, in what ways would you work with the city to create more economic opportunities and jobs in Scarborough Southwest?
So it's a great question, and the number one thing that's on my mind, and part of what made me run, is how unaffordable the city is. And that's the number one thing I hear from folks at the door. And often the conversation turns to housing and how expensive it is, but on the flip side, you have your income, right? And people are also looking for good paying jobs where you can actually be able to afford raising your family here, keeping a roof over your head, food on the table, all of that. And Scarborough Southwest, we actually used to have a very, very robust local economy. People could get good paying jobs here, support a family, and over time, some of that's been dwindling. We've lost lots of good employers in our employment lands. They've been sitting vacant, and there's a huge opportunity for us to actually bring some of that back in. So coming from a background in cities engineering, I get some of this from a high level. The reality is, when you look at how you use your land, some of it has to be for housing, some of it has to be for jobs, some of it has to be for recreation, We need to be able to fit all of these things together. And part of what the city can do when it comes to things like supporting employment is when we have new transit projects, when we have new housing developments, new institutions that are being built, we can use what are called community benefits agreements, which are allowing us to make a deal with the folks that are building things to actually invest back in the people that are here. Get local residents into training programs so that they can get good paying jobs in the trades or in the professions, not just on that local project, that's where they might start, but then eventually they can go all over the city. There's an opportunity for us to make sure that we are incentivizing more local businesses. In Scarborough, we have only 4 BIAs, business improvement areas. If you go west of Victoria Park and you just go along the Danforth, there's 4 BIAs just on the Danforth. Now, that's not for council to mandate, but we can support local businesses, and as an organizer, as a community organizer, I know how you actually bring people together to actually get them from a grassroots level to try and be able to initiate a BIA, say in Cliffside or in near Vic Park in St. Clair. There's lots of little pockets of businesses where there may actually be interest in some of that. The other key thing I'd say is it's not just about Scarborough Southwest, right? People live in a city because it connects us to each other and to opportunities. And these are arbitrary political boundaries. Everyone lives their lives on both sides of Vic Park or on both sides of Eglinton. And that's part of where my transit advocacy comes in. Connecting people to jobs that are not necessarily in our ward is really important. And when we shut down the RT, that makes it that much harder for people to get to opportunities in Scarborough Centre. When the Eglinton LRT is delayed, you can't get to Don Mills in Eglinton. The construction down by the Gardner or access to the 401 stops people from getting to Eastern Avenue or over to the airport where there are real economic opportunities. That's part of where, coming from a transportation background, where you invest in how you move people around really matters into how you get people access to jobs, even if it's not necessarily right in your backyard.
Very good, thank you, Kevin. Okay, so I want you guys to have the mics. So you can all share the mic. No, just a sec. I'm going to give you this one. You two can share this one because it's more important to hear you guys talk. And now, keep your comments short if you can, okay? And Mr. Timekeeper, it's going to be an 8-minute section, okay? So we've done 3 already. So 5 more minutes of conversation. If you can keep your own comments to 30 seconds, we're going to make it chatty, so.
Perfect. So I think, Kevin, what you said is great, and it's absolutely correct. And to that point, what I just wanted to point it out is I have already in this community demonstrated a few things that Kevin was mentioning. When the Golden Mile is going to be having 35,000 units, I have already, for the last year and a half, working with United Way, negotiating how our community in Oakridge and Clare-Lee, the youth can actually get training to be able to build when those houses are being built. So that negotiation I've done already. I also negotiated with the past councillor and the City Hall in creating a training center for carpentry in the Golden Mile area, which opened in the summer of this year. So I've demonstrated that work just as a citizen through Feed Scarborough. And I'm hoping as your next councillor I can take the bull by the horn.
And you go in whatever order, and by the way, Kevin, after they've all had one turn, you can join in.
I think as decision makers, we recognize that you can't have your cake and eat it too. There's an opportunity cost. And one thing I'll share in contrast to my colleagues is when we make, and the city has made an abundant number of rezoning decisions on our employment lands. And we see that across the Golden Mile, we're seeing it at Scarborough Junction. And when a city makes that active, intentional decision, you're taking away the opportunity for economic development. So I push back on the supply argument that housing advocates push, supply. I think we've got to look at more regulation, especially when looking at the investor class. So I will present that as a contrast, that we need to be very careful when we rezone. Can we rezone some? Yes, but what we've seen in Scarborough across the Golden Mile, Scarborough Junction, is the mass rezoning of employment lands, which are economic development opportunities, into housing. And we're not seeing a nuanced, thoughtful approach to balancing the economic interests of Scarborough residents in the conversation of building new housing.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment?
So for me, running a business myself, starting a BIA is not easy. If you go around and ask every business, are they willing to spend $1,600 to $2,000 a year? Probably not everyone on that strip will agree to paying that. So starting a BIA, it's not as simple as that. It is a complex project. It's a complex initiative, and it requires, as a counselor, I can only initiate it, as Kevin has said, but it's up to the business people if they want to take it forward. And guess what? I would say 50% will not come on board. So it's great, the thought is great, but to get it up and running, it's gonna be a big challenge, and I can bet you on that. Now, businesses, like IT businesses, why are they in Markham? Because they get tax incentives. We're gonna, as city councilors, we're gonna have to work really hard to provide incentives to corporations to come and set up their businesses or their branches in Scarborough. My experience has been that it's not gonna be easy, but we would have to find a way. We would have to find a middle way to bring corporations back to Scarborough. Right now, the only jobs that are here are either HR, you have Scotiabank. I mean, again, it's more of engineering students coming from India. I have a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances that work there, but local students, do they get a job there? No. So the idea is, I'm not an expert. I'm gonna work with subject matter experts. I'm gonna have to consult with the residents and kind of find brilliant ideas to how to bring corporations so that they can set up their businesses or their branches, home branches in our riding. Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, do you want to say something, or do we open for others?
Sure, I'll add one more thing. So the other piece to this too, of course, the city employs tens of thousands of people. Right? The city has an opportunity to be a model employer and make sure that we are paying people good wages for job opportunities within the city. And we've done programs in the past, like the Better Buildings program, which has introduced 46,000 years worth of good paying work. When we think about things like the climate crisis and trying to deal with our environmental future, the city has an opportunity once again to lead on those initiatives and make sure that these are job creators. And by the way, this is part of why the Toronto York Region Labour Council has actually endorsed me. I'm the only candidate in this race they've endorsed. They represent 200,000 working class residents all across the region because they know I'm actually going to speak up for workers and people who are trying to make a living in the city.
Okay. This timekeeper, I just wanted to check, is that 8 minutes for the section?
Oh, I thought you want 8 minutes in total.
Yeah, is that 8 minutes in total?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, that's what I was, very good, thank you. Thanks, folks. Well, I think that worked very well. You're all very good, respectful candidates with lots of good things to say. So my next question, I'm going to start with Suman, and I'm going to ask you, what are your priorities within the city budget? What revenue tools will you use to fund those plans, or what services would you reduce to fund your priorities?
Thanks, Peter. One of my biggest priority when we talk about budget for the city, as we all know, we need to balance our budget. That is the key factor that we all need to believe in. My top of my priority list is, of course, housing investment, safety investment, and safety doesn't always mean, I shouldn't say that. Safety means proper infrastructure, safety infrastructure with crime as well as streets. And one thing that we cannot forget is transit. If we are talking environment, if we are serious about environment, we need to invest in our transit system. So these are my top 3 priorities, which is very much aligned with the current city priorities. We need Scarborough Southwest to be a part of these conversations. So the next part of the question was if I'm going to, how am I going to find the funding?
And
Yes. So how am I going to find the funding? There are various ways, and we have seen how the current mayor, I'm very aligned with her on the way she's finding the funding, but also we need to look at how we're going to reduce our spending. It is not always negotiating with the different levels of government, which, by the way, I've already done. As I said earlier, I've negotiated with the province for a program and got funding for the city. I've negotiated with the federal government, got funding for the city. I can say in this panel or any other candidates, I'm the only candidate who has been able to do it, but also we need to look at our spending. We need to understand where the money is being spent and look into if there are efficiencies that can be found. With those kind of fundings, I think our priorities can be funded without an issue. And we all need to look at that together. That's pretty much I'll start with, and then I'll come back.
Very good. Who'd like to go next?
Would you like to go next?
No, you don't need to, if nobody wants to.
Then I can keep
You
talking.
can use the one in front of you, Malik.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So I've already, through my film festival activities, I've negotiated with both the federal and the province to get funding for Indigenous community sports events. So I know how the governments work on all three levels, to be quite frank with you. Now, coming back to the budget challenge, the reality is the federals and the province have to cough up their 80%. There's no other way to balance that budget. They were talking about tolls. I'm totally against the tolls because unfortunately that won't work. People are already hurting. You cannot increase taxes. Again, people are already hurting. I'm against increasing any tax, any municipal sales tax. I agree with the current mayor on a few items, but I don't agree with every one of them. Recently, she has pushed the federals and the province to fund both for the shelters, the housing, for the refugees, and I totally agree. It's the responsibility of the federals and the province for both shelters as well as childcare, as well as refugees, hosting those refugees. So we're as a city councillor, we're going to have to work with our counterparts and our upper levels of government, but at the end of the day, they are responsible, and same goes for the public transit. What shocks me is the RT derailment, and the countries I come, like the country I come from, this is normal. Things going over their lifespan, but I would never expect something like that in Canada. I was surprised.
Thank you. We're just going to ask you to pass the mic. Whoever that is.
Kevin, very knowledgeable.
Sorry.
Of course, Suman.
All are shallows.
When I was a trustee in 2020, we saw first a historic pandemic that had such implications on our public schooling system. And I remember in mid-August when myself and other Scarborough trustees led the charge for us to make an historic decision to go into our untouched and 25 years TDSV reserves. We lost that vote. The intention was to hire more teachers. We knew Scarborough was disproportionately hit. Higher rates of transmission. We wanted to hire more teachers to lower class size. We sadly lost that vote 10 to 11, ironically, with so-called progressives from downtown who didn't want to spend money. Next day, the Conservative Minister of Education gave us permission to go into our reserves to hire more teachers. And I was very proud that we were able to do that. And because of our leadership, my board trusted me as the leader of the board of the budget for the next 2.5 years. And I share this because there are times where you have to balance the budget, as I did in my last 2 years as trustees, and there are times you have to spend to accommodate the dire need society faces. So that's the approach I'll bring on the question of taxation. When the need presents itself, we spend.
Thank you, Parthi. Did you want to say something?
Reality is, you need to invest in your services and your infrastructure, or you get things like the RT derailment, or we have things like bus service cuts that I've talked with hundreds of neighbors who've been impacted by. We have $1.5 billion shortfall. $1.5 billion. Trying to just get this through property taxes or land transfer taxes like the city does right now, it doesn't work. It's like finding a toonie in the couch when your mortgage or rent is due at the end of the month. It doesn't mean anything. We need totally new revenue tools and a different deal with the provincial and federal government. I've actually spoken at City Hall about having a commercial parking levy to get something like $500 million a year to invest into our infrastructure and services. If you tried to put that on property taxes, you're talking about $600 or $700 a year. You're talking about doubling transit fares. They're just incomparable. And so we need to have a diverse set of revenue tools and to be able to properly invest in the city. And that's part of the reason that the city's budget chief, our new budget chief, Councillor Shelley Carroll, she's in charge of figuring out how to get us out of this $1.5 billion shortfall, and she's endorsed me. Because she knows I'm going to be there to make some of the difficult decisions to help us get out of the budget crisis that we're in. She's the mayor's budget chief to try and figure this path out, and she wants me at the table.
Thank you, Suman. Did you want to?
Yeah, just one more thing I just wanted to add on that is when you're dealing with budget, and often when dealing with budgets that's going in public sector, we often do not realize that we need people making decisions who actually have experience in managing budget and bigger budget in private sector. There's a lot to learn. And I'm one of the candidates who has run my own business, worked for multi-million-dollar corporations as well, and actually know how to manage budgets, how to have employees and deal with them.
Very good. You just like it when I have to drape it around you. All right. All right. Well, that's very good, gentlemen. Thank you. The next question, I'm going to direct it Malik. You've got your mic there. And what would you bring to City Council to ensure the residents of Scarborough Southwest can safely walk, bike, drive, take transit, and other modes of transportation locally and across the city?
Okay, so I had to write this down because there are multiple items on this question. So walking safety, bike, driving, and transit. So I would say we would have to revise the speed limits. We would have to study the speed limits on a few of the roads, arteries. I would recommend speed bumps and humps. Speed cameras, they work. They're expensive, but they work. I would also, now coming back to the safety for transit, more constables won't do the job. We already have enough constables that are being paid extremely well, but guess what? There's still violent crimes. Throughout the pandemic, I'm ashamed to say this, but I'll say it, like my family, I've told them, take Uber, do not take the public transit. Myself, throughout the pandemic, I have not stepped on the public transit. Since I came to Canada, east to west, north to south, I myself was traveling on TTC. Right now, that's how bad it is. So we really need to do something. And the root cause of that is mental health challenges. So I won't say that people just commit crime just out of nowhere. It's out of the high cost of living and addiction. So we need to go to the root cause, and I would highly recommend that we invest in the Toronto Community Crisis Services. They're expanding in 2024. I would recommend that they start expanding that, because that will help with these violent crimes. And guess what? I'm totally against I have sympathy for homeless people, but transit is not for them. You don't have to vote for me if you don't like me, but I am very harsh on a few items, and this is one of them. You cannot have people with taking drugs, injecting themselves, sleeping on streetcars. No, that's not that for them. They have to be provided with proper shelter, proper space, where they can live with dignity. So that's my take on that. Now, we also have to put in better visible, speed signs around school areas. So those are my various recommendations on safety. In terms of the other modes of transport, unfortunately, since the pandemic, or I would say after this RT derailment, the statistics is 79% of residents in Scarborough are taking more Uber. And to Kennedy Station, the numbers have increased to 29%. And these are actual facts and figures. So that just tells you how bad it's getting. So if we don't invest in our TTC, and we don't ask the federals and the province to increase their funding, unfortunately, it's going to get worse. Thank you.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
You want me to read it? I'll read the question again. It's, what would you bring to City Council to ensure the residents of Scarborough Southwest can safely walk, bike, drive, take transit, and other modes of transportation locally and across the city? Go ahead, Mitch.
So I work in transportation engineering, so I'll try and say as much as I can, but there's more on my platform, on my website. I'm happy to chat more about it. But number one, of course, we need to invest in transit. Part of what I want to see is when the RT was derailed, we need to be making sure that there's an off-road busway. I've been long advocating for that to save transit riders 20 minutes and get 70 buses an hour off of Kennedy and Midland. It's better for everybody. We need to have a 10-minute network on all our major routes. We don't have overnight bus service. We don't have fare integration between TTC and GO. Investing in transit's got to be number one. On top of that, Scarborough's roads were designed only around the car. Now, of course, people are going to continue to drive in Scarborough, but we need to be thinking about what's the future going to look like, and that means making sure our roads are not highways, but they are places that everyone and all road users can actually find a safe way to get around. Things like safer crossings of the street, lights on both sides of the street. Half of our roads, they're pitch black on one side, if you notice when you're walking around. Even things like snow clearing, right? We don't clear our snow off of our sidewalks properly in the winter, and that's really challenging for people to get around in the city. And then, of course, one of the things that I've been very, very vocal about is having some school safety zones. I want to safe school travel plans, which can include things like school safety zones, speed cameras. I want to sit down with every single school administration and actually come up with a plan, because we've had far too many people getting injured and killed in collisions, including school children in our community.
Okay, very good. So, Suman,
Awesome.
and then Parthi.
Thanks. So when we talk about safety, there is, in my mind, there's two clear things. One is street safety and one is crime safety. So in the crime safety, yeah, totally. So when we talk about street safety, one thing that I'm going to say is I personally believe that what we need to do, nobody can say we don't want safe streets. Everybody does. But what that means varies from community to community. And the community needs to have a voice in what they want in their community. It is not for me to always decide it. As a councillor, I'm going to bring you options, but I need you to decide. In the Oakridge community that you see right now, in the beginning of this year, I submitted a plan to the city, a proposal to get approved for the neighborhood streets plan, and just last month, I got the email from the city that I got that project approved. What that really means is we have now funding to do safer streets. But what that means will be decided by the community here, living in Oakridge, on is it speed bumps, is it speed reduction, whatever that might be, community needs to have a say. And when we talk about crime reduction and safety, I've worked with the CPLC and the youth in various programs to support safety and address the root cause. I'm not going to take much time, but I'm more than happy to chat after about this.
Thank you. Parthi?
I think two quick points. The promise from the city to resurface the old Scarborough RT is non-negotiable. This needs to happen. It's become a nightmare whether you're South Scarborough or North Scarborough. That will be a #1 priority. Number two, on the issue of bike lanes, it's clear the city has intentions to extend the Danforth, bring them up to St. Clair and Kingston. I'm a cyclist, and as a trustee, I made sure we had bike racks at all of our schools, and we promoted the culture in so many different capacities. But unfortunately, hearing from the BIA, the Crossroads, wonderful organization, they're not in favor. I won't be able to support that due to the impact it has on business and on traffic, and I think it's very clear that you have clarity from all your candidates on that issue. On the last issue of speed humps, those of us who've been here, actually been here in Scarborough for a long time, know this incredible disparity of treatment west of Vic Park versus east of Vic Park. Countless communities have seen in the beach and in East York speed bumps, speed humps being brought in when community voice has been activated. I lost track the number of times I used to advocate to the former councillor in the city for the east side, for Scarborough, to get those speed bumps and humps to calm traffic. We never saw it come through. I will be a strong voice to ensure we have the same treatment whether you're east or west of Vic Park. Thank you.
If you didn't succeed, how you will succeed as a councillor?
Sure. Regarding the bike lanes, when I was running in 2010, many of you may remember, pharmacy had a bike lane installed, and guess what? The bike lane was uninstalled. So who paid for it? The taxpayers. So I'll put it this way. I only cycle for recreation and health purposes. I'm not against the cyclist, but we would have to work with the cyclist to find the proper roads and streets. And once installed, I don't want them to be removed. Because if we're doing that kind of legwork with consultation, time, energy, and money being spent for putting those up, and then someone comes a few years later and removes them, it's just not worth it.
Thank you. Okay, so now the fourth question, this is going swimmingly. And the fourth question is for Parthi. And Parthi, your question is, if you are elected as councillor, what measures would you bring to City Council to make life more affordable for the residents of Scarborough Southwest?
Thank you. It's one that intersects with a previous question on taxes. And unfortunately, there's this stereotype that those of us in the suburbs are anti-tax or averse to any property tax increase. But The story is, of course, much more complex than that. It goes to 1998 and amalgamation, where 25 years ago we saw our 6 cities merge into one. And what we've seen in a nutshell is a culture where over 25 years, regardless of administration, our taxes go up and our service quality goes down. For those of us who remember the city of Scarborough, I grew up here in the 80s and 90s, a very well-run city. We didn't have strikes, modest property tax increase, and timely delivery of services. So that's the context, and we understand why people are reluctant to support a property tax hike. And that's what we need to keep in mind when we see and hear people hurting. Inflation is monumental. Grocery prices is up. Personally, I have had friends, blue collar and white collar, lose jobs in the last month. We have to keep this in mind when we make these financial decisions with heavy implications on the wallet of so many families. And I'm not against a property tax increase. Anyone who's telling you that is not being honest with you. That is a reality. It's one tool. We have to look at a property tax increase as a last resort, because our city is increasingly becoming a tale of two cities. All the data, Professor David Halchansky of the City of Toronto, his maps tell how we went from a very middle-class city to one of affluence and one without privilege, without income. So that needs to be center of mind when we make decisions that impact folks, especially who are house poor. They have money to pay the mortgage, pay the groceries, but can't accommodate another significant hit in their wallets. We need to look at a hotel tax. We need to be able to look at a progressive approach to property tax, with, of course, accommodations for fixed income seniors, those with disability, etc. A vacant home tax that actually goes even higher and frees up more supply. And think very careful about the commercial parking levy so it doesn't hurt mom and pop stores and strip malls. That's where so much of Scarborough's culture lives, is in our strip malls and storefronts, and we have to keep that in mind when we're looking at a commercial parking levy. It doesn't harm them. And ultimately, we have to look at equitable distribution of resources. We saw that at the TDSB, at the city, after my wife and I had our baby daughter. We saw the disparity of the programming for toddlers west of Vic Park, a wealth of city-run programming, east of Vic Park, a dearth. A clear example of how this story, how the city has evolved over 25 years. And it's why I'm proud to have the support of Scarborough NDPers, Liberals, and Conservatives. They know my voice will be for Scarborough and not beholden to any other interests. Thank you.
I didn't want to have to wrestle from you. You'd take me in a minute. So who wants to speak next? Okay, that's fine.
You give me the mic, I thought I had the mic. So, we know in today's city's budget, around 30% of our revenue comes from property tax, and 70% doesn't. 30 more percent comes from different levels of government. And though we have a lot of different tools to raise revenue and generate revenue, we need to look at what are the other 30% that is actually coming in, and could that be increased? Could we get more than just 30% from the provincial and federal government? So that all needs to be considered before we talk about property tax increase. The reality is it will be increased. There is no question about it. But how much is the question? Is it in line with inflation, or is it drastically increased? So when we look at property tax increase, because it hurts all of us, even a renter, because the landlord is going to pass that charge back to the renter. So we need to look at various tools before we think about property tax increase.
Thank you, Suman.
You stood up, so I knew I should shut up.
So for the taxes, I'm okay to increase the vacant home taxes. I'm against the property taxes at this stage. People are already hurting. The interest rates are extremely high. So I'm against that. I'll be very clear. I'm not going to lie to get your votes. I'm going to be very honest and upfront on those. I would highly recommend that the city budget be reviewed line by line and every city division be audited. And we need to try to save money where we can. I once worked for a hospital, and guess what? Every year the budget was renewed, and what they did, good furniture, they said to the staff, pick it up, take it, I'm not going to name the hospital, And I asked internally, why did that happen? Because they will lose the budget. So in government, a lot of things unfortunately happen this way. So audits have to be done. And yeah, so those are my positions on the taxation. Right now, I'm totally against increasing any property tax at this stage. Thank you.
Now, did you want to say something, Kevin? Kevin and then Parthi.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to affordability, the number one thing that's on everyone's mind is housing. And the city has a huge role to play in housing. We get to decide how much housing is built, where it gets built, what types of housing are we incentivizing, family-size units, and it's not just market housing. There's a whole role the city has to play on non-market housing, non-profit housing, using city-owned land, supporting more co-ops, having more renter to income. There's a whole spectrum of things the city's totally dropped the ball on, and that's the single biggest thing we could be doing, is making sure that enough people can find housing that matches where they are in life. That's the first thing, for sure. The other thing that I hear from a lot of folks is about services. So childcare is the second most for young families. And absolutely, we don't have nearly enough childcare facilities here. Certainly in the TDSB, there hasn't been any new childcare built east of Vic Park. It's almost all west of Vic Park. Even things like programming in community centers, so that there's places for kids to go, seniors housing and senior care, these are all things that the city could be investing in. And then I talk a lot about transit, because that's about connecting people to those services and to those facilities. And on the other side of it, it's also making sure when our community grows that we're actually piecing it all together with the right infrastructure and services, so that you actually do have childcare, community centers, or libraries that actually help with affordability in nearby. So you're not paying a transit fare or having to fill up your car again.
Thank you. It's good that Kevin brought up city-run daycares in the TDSB. That's not the TDSB's school core responsibility. And later tonight or tomorrow morning, I'll post a map of the city-run childcare centers in the Toronto. It's a tale again of two cities. Who gets what? Who gets tax dollars? And this is a reflection of decision makers that are in power. And I'll leave it at that. And I'll close with a piece that I think you may have seen in my literature. I was completely against the city's decision to spend $300 million for us to host FIFA World Cup, an organization well known for corruption. $300 million of our tax dollars, where we know the cheap seats are going to be $5,000. Scarborough residents are not going to that. That's the eye I'll bring on city decision. Are these tax dollars being spent wisely for City of Toronto and our residents? That's the lens I'll bring. I'll be bringing a Scarborough lens to the city's budget. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. You did very well on that question. We have one more for you, and I think the way we're going to run this one is, it's a question that's going to be open for all of you, and we'll give everyone 2 minutes for this question, okay, Mr. Timer? And if you could let them know when they have 30 seconds left. And I would suggest when you raise the yellow card, I'll say football now. When you raise the yellow card, just leave it raised in case they don't see it right from the start. So the question for all of you is, Scarborough Southwest is one of the most diverse wards in Toronto. As councillor, how would you ensure that all the voices in Scarborough Southwest are heard and engaged in the political process? Who'd like to go first? Malik.
So for me, I'm a community builder. My approach would be, I don't know if it may be right or wrong, but this is what makes sense to me. I'm going to be hosting monthly get-togethers, whether that's at coffee shops, whether that's at someone's residence, in each four corners of the riding. I'll make my cell phone available, and I will at least acknowledge within 48 hours. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that I'm going to make it, because sometimes you get emails and messages that you don't really want to respond to them. So that's why I want to be very clear that I'm going to at least acknowledge, but if the email or the text message is dirty, I'm not going to respond to that. Sometimes that happens, so I just want to be clear. Community consultation, meaningful consultation is very important, because that's how you get ideas. I'm no expert. I would have to work with the community to get ideas, and subject matter experts to get their ideas and get them going from the ground up. Thank you so much. I did want to mention one item which is very important, the 300 million FIFA that has been invested. The city cannot cancel it. So whether you hate me, the city cannot cancel it. I'll be very honest on that. Thank you.
Who would like to go next?
So one of my biggest part of my platform is consultation. And I'm sure you're going to hear from everybody how they're going to have meetings, and we're going to all have that. It is, we all say that for sure. But I'm going to go back into my experience, of Feed Scarborough. Feed Scarborough, when I started, to what it is now, it has been one of the most innovative food bank circle in all of Canada. And as much as I would like to stand here and take credit for it, but that's not me. It is, we consulted with our clients who actually come in, and we found a solution together that made it one of the best food bank. That's why in less than 3 years, we have grown to such level. It's because we find what our constituents, our clients need, and we deliver a solution. And that is exactly what I'm going to do as a councillor when it comes to the ward. And it is not a one-point solution, and you're going to hear from all of us very similar things. We're going to have consultation, we want to hear from you, we're going to, and yes, they're all valid, and that's all we're going to use. But at the end of the day, I have a track record to demonstrate that I've heard from my constituents, and I've delivered in a program that we are proud of. I'm not proud of food banks. I'm not proud of that so many people are being served. It's unfortunate, but we have found a solution that gives them dignity, respect, and those who needed help, we provided.
Thank you, Suman. Kevin?
So I've been a long-time community advocate, and I've worked on many different initiatives across the city and in our community. I've spent a lot of time in and out of City Hall as a community member. I've worked with almost everyone on council, mayor's office, city staff, and I've seen the difference between the councillors who really know how to get things done for their community and the ones that don't. And the best councillors bring community members, experts, other elected officials all to the table, because nobody actually has all the answers on how to move things forward. And through some of that advocacy work, one of the things I found myself often asking is not just who's at the table, but who isn't at the table. Because the reality is, half the city are visible minorities, half the city are renters, half the city are women. Where are any of them on Toronto City Council? And you don't often have voices for all of these people making these decisions, and so you have to make sure that they're part of the conversation, because at the end of the day, this is about serving everybody in our community. And so part of what I want to make sure that I do, as somebody who has seen what an effective councillor can do, I want to make sure we have local neighborhood working groups. I want to make sure there's a diversity of representation in those groups across age, ethnicity, income. There's a whole variety of things that we could make sure that we're getting different voices. And all of us, of course, are showing up at your door during election times. I'm used to doing that even outside of elections, doing community organizing work, and I'm going to continue to do that, because we need to find ways to actually get to where people are at, whether it's at home, at school, at a coffee shop. There's a whole slew of things that are going to be needed in order for me to actually hear from the 110,000 people that live in this community. I've got my ideas and vision, of course, but this isn't about me. It's about how all of us can shape our community together. I've also done lots of work as an advocate on things like civic engagement, electoral reform, just how do you get people more engaged in our civic process, and that's exactly what I want to see from a city council that actually engages our community.
Thank you. Parthi?
Thank you. I think it's on this question, it's such an important question given the tidal wave of development applications within our ward and across Scarborough for that matter, is that track record matters. I'm incredibly proud to have local leaders, not elected politicians from downtown who don't understand Scarborough, local parent council chairs from Fairmount to Oakridge to Birchcliff to Walter Perry to Robert Service to R.H. King. I can keep going. In my 8 years, all my parent council chairs saw the work ethic, the consultation, and the involvement I brought to their local communities that affected their local school, whether it was administration, staffing issues, or facility issues. So that's the record and why our campaign did so well last year. It was word of mouth, it was grassroots. And it's why I'm proud I have the support of activists in all parties, Nathan Shan, Manawang, NDPers, Brad Duguid, Liberals, some Conservatives as well, and even non-partisan leaders. Glenn de Bearmaker was the deputy mayor of Scarborough in 2014 to 18, supporting my candidacy because they know when you're non-partisan and you're not aligned or backed by a political party, you're going to be beholden to those political parties at City Hall. And that's my commitment, is to look at all perspectives, all voices, all neighborhoods, like I did for 8 years, to hold regular monthly Ask Me Anythings, AMAs, constant hours in ward community office set up. So that's my commitment, and my track record speaks for it, to make sure all voices are heard and involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Parthi. Well, as you can imagine, it's not easy to sit up here and ramble on for 2 hours and to think on your feet. It really is quite amazing. And you can see that it's been a long campaign, and they've spoken about so much so often that they really know their stuff. But we're going to, so to speak, take the mic out of their hands for a little minute and hold a different kind of round. And this is a speed round. And it has a speed round, and I know you're all familiar with the yes-no speed rounds, but this has a little twist. So here we go. So with the speed round, we have a number of questions, and all we're going to ask is for the candidate, after the question, to hold up a paddle that says yes or no. Do we have enough paddles here?
Hold up your paddle. Yes or no?
Oh, on both sides. Okay, sorry, I don't get out much. Okay, so you've got your yes and no paddles, which is great. So if you agree with the statement, you say yes. If you disagree, you say no. And that's great. But here's the, yes, go ahead.
In our last debate on the 9th, there was an opportunity to provide context to one question.
So if you'd like, you know, you're just so eager. So here's the twist. This is American Thanksgiving, and I know you're all missing American football today, so I appreciate that. So what we've done here is, you see each of our candidates have a little friend. And you know when you're watching a football game and it's the last 2 minutes or the last minute and a half, and there's a judgment call and the referee has it wrong, and the coach at the sideline gets all upset and throws a red flag? Well, we throw an elf off the shelf. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do. And what we're saying is there's going to be a series of questions, maybe 10, maybe more, and you get to choose one question to throw your elf. Okay?
All right.
Let's see how this goes. So you get one chance. So you've got to make some judgment. You know, there's at least 10 questions, so you have to sit there and think to yourself, well, you know, maybe I should hold on to my elf. Or no, this is when I need to throw it. So, judgment call on your guys' parts.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Hold on, elf. Don't throw it too fast, buddy.
Any questions, fellows? No? You got it? All right. And you don't have to use your elf.
Yeah.
Of course, you don't have to use it.
Pocket the elf.
Here we are. So this is the round of the quick answer round of questions. Now, if you do throw your elf, you get 1 minute to speak on the issue. And Mr. Tyner, if you can let them know 30 seconds in, that would be great.
To clarify, is it at that moment or at the end? The clarifying. Do you do it at that?
When you throw your elf.
So throw your elf after the question, right after the question.
After you get the result.
That way I know that there is or isn't. Or you can throw it during the question, whatever.
Throw the elf.
And if two of you want to throw in the same question, you're welcome to it. All right, so your first question, and I hope this goes well. Would you support a minor tax increase to increase funding for arts and culture in Scarborough Southwest? I want to see your paddles. You gotta know. Yes. Okay, very good, gentlemen. To combat climate change, Toronto has a goal of net zero by 2040. As part of the building approval process, that new developments demonstrate that most daily necessities and services such as work, shopping, education, healthcare, and leisure can easily be reached by a 15-minute walk, bike ride, or public transit site. Would you support that? All on the same page here. Okay, I'll make these tougher. Would you advocate for 24 hours, 7 day a week, 365 day a year, 366 in leap year, access to public washrooms in parks in Scarborough?
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeses.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Would you support more funding for bylaw enforcers and bylaw enforcement?
Ooh.
Very good. I love it when there's a dissenting ballot.
Oh, my goodness.
Do you support the proposed elimination of angular planning for mid-rise buildings?
Can you repeat the question, sorry?
Yes. Do you support the proposed elimination of angular planning for mid-rise buildings?
What's angular planning?
Yeah.
That's what
Oh, my goodness.
Angular
Going to
planning.
hell.
Yes.
Everything's going to heck.
Hold on.
Yeah, just give me a second. Just.
It's eliminating the step back at the back of a condo looking over the neighborhood. So the city wants to go straight up, 8 or 9 stories on any building, and that can be within 2 meters of the next neighborhood property. So the city wants to do that.
So the
Or
question
they're
is,
doing
do you
it.
support the
Do you
proposed?
support the elimination of the step
Eliminate.
back? And you want to see these buildings tower over residential neighborhoods? That's the question.
All right.
It's a hard question. It's confusing.
All right.
Want to say something?
No. Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, we just had a clarification, which thank you for that, sir, and our moderator agrees
There's
over
a lot
here.
to talk about. He's part of this bunch.
So that's irrelevant to this, sir. So the question again, which I'll put to you is,
No talking.
do you support the proposed elimination of angular planning for mid-rise buildings?
One yes.
Okay, there we are, folks.
A man with the curly hair.
Yes.
And no L shed, eh? Okay. Would you fund free TTC transportation for seniors?
Come on, Kevin. Kevin.
And let me remind you, you're on record now for saying these things.
Yes.
And you're accountable.
Yes, you are.
I have it on my platform.
Would you support reduced speed limits to meet City of Toronto Vision Zero goals?
No.
All right.
There we go.
No.
Good job. Standing out. Standing out.
Okay. To help address substance abuse issues and overdoses, the City of Toronto has made a request to Health Canada to decriminalize possession of controlled drugs and substances for personal use. Is this something you support?
Yes, 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 yes.
I'll read it, sure, I'll read that one again, it's a little tougher. To help address substance abuse issues and overdoses in the City of Toronto.
Easy.
And overdoses. The City of Toronto has made a request to Health Canada to decriminalize possession of controlled drugs and substances for personal use. Do you support it?
Yes, yes, yes,
The
yes,
City of
yes,
Toronto
yes,
has
yes,
made
yes.
a request to decriminalize possession of controlled drugs.
We can use this once or twice?
Once. You can use it once.
Oh, throw the help, throw
Come
the
on,
help,
throw the help.
All right, so gentlemen, how do you vote on that one?
Yes,
Come
yes,
up, Parthi.
yes, 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 yes,
It's up to you,
yes.
Parthi. Haven't heard from you yet. There we go.
No.
There we go. Thank you. Now, this is our first 10 questions. We've gone through 8 now, and I haven't seen any else fly.
Oh, come on.
I just want to hear them scream, that's all. All right. The best way to address food insecurity is supporting food banks.
Yeah, it's true. No.
Why not?
No, let's see out the
That's
alternative.
great. That's
Why?
That's right.
There's an other alternatives.
Thank you
That's
so
not the only
much
way to
for
help.
helping me out.
Okay.
No. Suman knows
Do you
that.
believe
Yeah, that's what I
increasing
said.
the police
No, he
budget would be the most effective way to make our communities safer?
Oh, two
Oh.
elves. 3 elves. Oh my goodness.
You can throw it. You can. Let's see your paddles first, and then we'll have you speak.
So increase the police budget?
Do you believe increasing the police budget would be the most effective way to make our community safer?
I said yes, but I voted.
Yep, of course. Paddle, Kevin?
Party. Paddle.
Paddle, Parthi?
What do you mean? I threw my thing.
That
Yes.
too.
Yeah, you have to
Paddle,
speak.
and then you
Yes
speak.
or no?
You can speak too.
Yes or no? Yeah, you have to speak.
No, and then speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
Repeat the question, please.
Do you believe increasing the police budget would be the most effective way to make our community safer?
Increasing
And you'll be able to speak
police
to it.
budget would make our community safer. but I
Yes.
get to give context
You
to my
get to
answer.
speak for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Yes and a no. Okay, thank you,
It's
gentlemen.
too long.
That's a little
Yeah,
tougher.
yeah.
Now we'll pick up the L's.
All right. They're screaming down there.
Malik, I'm gonna start with you.
Can we see what they said again? Can we see their cards again?
Now let's show the cards, everybody together.
All right,
because
one
we
more
missed-
time for paddles.
Everybody
Put your
together.
paddle up.
Well, when you speak. can you-
Yes, so.
When you speak, okay.
Yeah, so I agree in increasing the police budget year to year, but at the same time, I also strongly believe that we also have to go after the root cause, which is mental health and addiction. So we need to also invest in the Toronto Neighborhood Community Crisis Team as well. So it won't be just a one-way police budget increase, it will also have to be an increase in the mental health and addiction crisis management.
Oh, what are you talking about?
Okay, and the next elf belongs to Parthi. Anybody else?
Good now. You can pass the thing.
Yeah. So Parthi, you're up.
Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, okay. This is a very layered, complex, important discussion because safety and concern, whether it's on the TDC in our neighborhoods, is one of obvious impact. I grew up, as I mentioned, I came of age in Scarborough in the 90s. So those of us who were here in the 90s will remember Scarborough was, let's say, it was an interesting place, always an interesting place. And I had friends who, didn't make the right decisions. And I saw the challenges within policing. I'll just leave it at that, right? Which is to say there's need for reform, no doubt. There is room for training, better training, de-escalation, the involvement of other non-police services that require mental health, counseling, professional de-escalation folks, and that suite of services need to be included without a question when responding to 911 calls. That is clear that we need those new services, in the city under the previous administration and the current have made those moves. And I'll close on the reality is our population has significantly increased. We need to maintain the ratio of number of cops to population, and to have that, you have to hire more police officers. Thank you.
Thanks. One thing that we need to know when we're talking about this question is 30 years ago, our population was half and we had more police officers in the street. And today we have less police officers with a double population. And we are one of the lowest in North America with per capita police forces. So yes, if you're talking about safety, we are talking about policing, that is the reality. However, it is not the most effective way because we need to invest in services. We need to invest in programs that actually tackles the root cause. And like most of my answers, I've demonstrated with the Community Police Liaison Committee that I have supported the police into doing programs with the community and the youth where they actually have reduced violence in this community.
Okay, back to you. Thanks, Suman. Now, we want to leave a lot of time for audience questions, of course, because your questions are very important. Again, all of these were based on the input received from various community sources. So good for them. They posed some really good questions. I'm pleased that we have a diversity of views as well. Now, I'm going to just ask two more really quick ones before we go into the microphone questions. So get your cards ready. These will be quick. Now, Kevin, you still have your elf if you choose to use it. You don't have to, of course.
There's two more, is that right?
Two questions, yes.
Oh, the
And neither of them are barnstormers. So, you've been knocking on a lot of doors. Do you find residents more informed than perhaps you expected?
What's the entire question?
Cards.
What?
About the community issues and things that you worry about.
No.
Fair enough.
It's
Yep.
split down the middle.
Fair enough. Very good. Okay. Okay. And can you confirm that your staff would be staff who lived in Ward 20?
Okay.
Really?
Okay.
Okay.
Suman, you
Yeah,
got
you're
it.
being held to that. That's
You
good.
got it. You're all
Thank
held
you.
to those, eh?
Thank you.
I don't have to answer.
Elf.
Suckers.
No elf.
Oh, you have an elf?
I'm trying to think. You wanna throw-
Joey!
Oh, it's your last chance. There you go. Go ahead, you get a minute. Poor guy.
Oh, man.
I mean, I think, just tying into both of the last two questions, right? Like, everyone I talk to is far, far more informed and engaged on these issues than I actually thought. And everyone here, I mean, all of you are smart, thoughtful folks. I know we don't just have two brain cells that just go yes, no, yes, no. It's fun. But all of these are complex issues. And I very much believe that none of us is actually an expert in every single issue. I really believe when it comes to things like solving engineering problems, like I do through work, you have to ask experts, you have to ask for evidence, you have to follow evidence, and you need to engage community members. And I said this last time, when you go through this sort of exercise, if every one of you had a paddle, none of us would actually have matching responses because there's just too many different combinations. All of these are complex and nuanced issues, and just to answer the one about staff in Ward 20, I've talked with many folks who work in City Hall. They don't feel comfortable. Sometimes you get harassed by community members, or at the grocery store. People don't always necessarily have to live in the riding that they represent in order to do a good job. Some folks might live just on the outside of the boundary. These are just arbitrary political lines, but you need folks who have some connection and commitment to the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, so now time for the questions. Yeah, look at that. Time for the questions. And I'm going to ask Jonathan here to head out to the audience.
Get back your
The
card.
way that we are going to do this, again, everyone's been very respectful up here, and we expect everyone out here to be respectful as you ask questions. Now, what asking a question means is you are asking a simple question. You're not providing context. You're not making political speeches. You're not going on and on. With great respect, we're not here to hear you talk about your point of view. We're here to hear them discuss a question. If you go on and on, I will cut you off. I'm sorry, I'm just cutthroat like that. Jonathan here, who is very experienced at this, he will be out in the audience, and I will randomly pick people to ask questions. The good news is I don't know any of you, so I've got no biases here as well. So, and Jonathan will pass you the mic. So I think we will start now from your standpoint. Oh, two other things. I would ask, out of respect for everyone here, if you are a supporting member of one of these folks, like someone who's helping on their campaign, don't ask a question.
Great.
It's just fair because that's just unfair. So thank you for that in advance. And you can see their support for that. So play by the rules, please, folks. And if you have a question, folks, you'll get 1 minute to answer. And you've seen how cutthroat our timekeeper is. So,
One more thing to add.
yes.
Please speak into the microphone. We've got about 60 people online that
Oh, excellent.
won't hear you if you don't speak into the microphone.
Excellent. Thank you for coming. Okay, so first question, we're going to go to that side in that corner. If you could say your name, please.
Good evening. My name is Peter Handjis, and just for full disclosure, I am also a Ward 20 councillor candidate, but I couldn't make the cut.
This is simply for a question, sir.
So my question to the candidates at the table, would it be worthy, if elected, to convince City Council to defer projects that have already been financed in order to realize $900 million just by deferral?
Who wants to go first?
I just want some clarification, what projects is he referring to?
Just in general.
Just in general.
How long do we have?
1 minute. 1 minute. That's the question from your constituent. You need to.
So my take would be that I would not cancel what has already been approved. It's going to take resources, and cancellation always has penalties, especially when it gets to government and public contracts. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else?
I can say the same thing pretty much, that the things that we have seen demonstrated especially in Scarborough when it comes to transit, we have open files, closed files, open files, closed files. So the project that's approved, let it go and let's move forward and figure out how to fix the ones that's coming forward.
I'll take a different take on that. I think we have to be adaptive and flexible. The only reason we were able to finance these new bus routes in Scarborough by our mayor, which was a wonderful decision, was because of the delay, not intentionally, but of the Metrolinx operating costs. So I think similarly on projects that may not fit the time and place, there needs to be a reflection, the ability, very good question, Peter, to now push that off and use those funds for other more pressing concerns. So we've got to be nimble and flexible in financial decision making.
It's an interesting question, and there's definitely some creative places we might be able to defer some projects, but do I support kicking up the can down the road on infrastructure investments where we've got a city where we've derailed our transit lines, where our highways are crumbling, local roads and major roads are falling apart? No, I do not support deferring critical work of investing into our city, especially since we've done that for so long, especially when some of those contracts may come with additional penalties. That's penny wise and pound foolish.
Thank you. Now I'm going to make you work, Jonathan. I'm going to send you over here, and the lady with it looks like a red and black scarf. I'm half colorblind, folks, so if I'm... Oh, excellent.
Hello. For those of you, my name is Ingrid. So, what are you going to do for women of Scarborough Southwest and Toronto Scarborough? Women everywhere, but what are you going to do right here? I want to tell you my experience.
No,
in
no,
East
this is
End,
your question.
and it's disrespectful. Let's respect the women of Toronto Scarborough South. Thank you.
So, who wants to go first?
Thank you for that question. It's something I approach recognizing I have immense male privilege, something I learned because my wife is a sociologist and teaches in sociology at York University. It's something I'm proud. My campaign manager last year and this year are women. All senior, my comms people are women. A lot of my campaign team are women, and we approach decision making, especially on land-based, place-made decision-making from a feminine lens that involves cooperation, collaboration, and compromise. Lastly, I'll close, and that's one of the reasons why I have a nuanced position on policing and why we need to recognize we have to be collaborative, open-minded, and recognize the need for policing. I've heard from countless women the security and safety they feel when they see a police officer walking the beat or driving around, and that's part of why we need to be non-ideological when it comes to safety and security of our communities and neighborhoods. Thank you for that question.
Very good. Next comment?
Sure. Ingrid, great question as usual. But yes, women's safety, and not only just women's safety, but respecting the ideas of the women, and that is why in Feed Scarborough, 80% of my staff is women. It's not 50-50. So I personally, and if I don't say this, my wife's going to beat me up. I'm just kidding. It is important to have the real voice of everybody in the community. We cannot exclude anybody, whether it is sex, religion, or anything. It needs to be, everybody needs to be kept safe, their opinions needs to be safe, and it needs to be heard and executed.
Thank you. Malik?
In my festival, I've hired 50-50, men and women, and I focus on Indigenous communities when hiring. I focus on youth coming out from college, universities, and I also focus on disabled bodies. The reason why I say that, because those are the less fortunate, and I prefer hiring them. They're great, and I have a mom, I have sisters, and I believe in women dignity and respect, and I'm all in to listen and to work together with the women in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the question. I mentioned earlier, half the city are women. We certainly don't have the representation that we should have at City Hall. A lot of the work that I've had the chance to do around things like transit, around making sure this is a city for everybody, where everyone can get around. For example, in research, transit has often been planned around 9 to 5 commuters. That's typically male dominated. There's far more women taking trips outside of rush hour, where you actually cut service levels. You don't actually make sure that child care and other caregiving trips are accommodated. Chain tripping, where you actually go from one place to another and accommodating errands. Those are things that are often typically more done by women. And these are decisions that we haven't actually been accounting for when we make decisions at City Hall. When it comes to things like housing and childcare, those are things that are also often far more on women's mind. What I want to do is not just tell you, I'm going to check this box and do performative tokenizing. I need to listen to women in the community. I need to make sure that I follow the gender-based, the gender equity lens that the city has, and there's much more we'll have to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate everyone's respect. This is going swimmingly. The fellow in the front row had a simple question, please.
Yes, a simple question. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm not a good microphone controller. I'd like to ask you all about what you think of this land we call freedom and democracy. And there's 4 of you up there. You've got the chance to talk on the microphone, answer questions. Thank you, Parthi, for answering a slightly question at the starting. But what do you think about not having all the candidates up there, at least the candidates in the room that showed up? Thank you very much. Peace out.
So, anyone want to speak to this one? Malik?
As I said to you when we met at the back, that it's not my decision, it's the decision of the organizers, and I respect that.
I mean, I appreciate all the work that all the candidates are doing. It is a lot of work to actually run. Didn't organize the event. I'm sure there's a reason that you had criteria, but I'm glad you could show up, and I do hope folks have the chance to actually interact with and ask all the candidates here different questions about their priorities and platform. I'm grateful for the opportunity, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. A very good question and gets at some core principles of how we do business. I don't know the answer as the other candidates. I do think you have every right to ask, and I'm curious, and I will ask the organizers to share the criteria. It needs to be public, and that's part of why accountability is so important to me as a trustee of the biggest school board in Canada. We reformed the school board a great deal, and it's because sunlight is the greatest disinfectant, whether it's a community organization or the City of Toronto, and I'm confident the organizers will provide a very clear answer as to how they deliberated on us for. So I hope that was a meaningful answer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Not much to add, but the reality is everybody's voice needs to be heard.
Yes.
But also I'm not in the position to know why this happened. I'm sure I know most of the organizers, and I trust their judgment. There must be a very good reason why this has happened. But at the end of the day, once again, I'm really glad you all are here and you're going to be able to speak to most of the people and answer any of their questions.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.
All right, Ron, maybe we'll have a clarification.
It's a very good question, and at the very start of this thing, when the elections were coming through, it was starting in September, and as a group we wanted to promote candidates. How do we do that? So on October 16th, the last day of signing up, we went to City Hall and we said, how do we get in touch with them? They said, you go up there, look on the website, find out their contact information, and then do what you want to do, invite them. We did that. There was 8 candidates. That's what we started our planning with. To get these rooms, to get these things together, takes a lot of time, and we're volunteers. It's not personal, it might feel like it. Lessons learned when you come out to run, the day the door closes for nominations, put your contact information in there. That makes our job easier, okay? So you guys are running around on the streets doing what you do. We're going behind the scenes trying to organize this, and I appreciate everyone being here. And that's why we're televising it and putting it out for everyone to see that can't attend.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Yes, no, a lot of work's gone into this. There's no question. I've been in the meetings and I just love it. The fellow in the front with the gray coat.
Great coat.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mohammed Ali Bukhari. I'm just wondering, all these candidates, they spoke very well.
But are these political rhetoric or there is a conviction involved? I like to hear it from them.
Thank you for that question. As I said in the very beginning, and I've kept on saying throughout the evening, that most of my commitments I've already demonstrated in this community. So without even being elected as a community member, I've demonstrated. So this is just not empty words, it is a reality for me.
Do you mind just repeating the question? So, just want to make sure I understood.
Yeah, I said, are these rhetoric statements or there is conviction involved to your statements, whatever you said all over this time?
Absolutely. I mean, part of what made me run is not because, oh, there's an empty seat that needs to be filled, or, oh, it's my turn to do whatever. Right? This isn't musical chairs. This isn't a joke. This is our community's future. And when I think about my future in this community, wanting to raise my family and what direction we're going in, I have no confidence that the direction we've been going in is what we need going forward. And I have a track record, not just through my professional work, but my years as an advocate at City Hall. I've gotten more done at City Hall than anyone else at this table. And I've seen that there is a need for a new generation of leaders who actually understand what's going on now and can see what direction we're going in. That's part of why I'm running here. Thank you.
That's a very strong statement, especially one who's being supported by downtown councillors who've repeatedly harmed and hurt Scarborough interests. And that's why I'm running, this is why it's not political rhetoric. For 25 years, we've seen Scarborough get the short end of the stick. I grew up here since 1988. It's very deep and close to my heart. To hear that type of language is ridiculous, coming from councillors who've hurt Scarborough's interests. We've seen that time and time again. And I'm here to make sure Scarborough's voice is heard, that we stand up for Scarborough, and we get what we deserve.
So I'll put it this way, the more you get to know me, you will understand if I make a statement, I honor it, and credibility is most important with integrity. I'd rather lose and than lie and get your vote. Secondly, I'm not here to build politics as a career. I have a beautiful IT business and I believe in it strongly. The reason I'm here is to make some changes, because from sitting on the sidelines, I'm just going to be an advocate, and guess what? Advocates can just sign petitions and be at protests. Nothing else it can be done. You have to be at the table. So that's why I'm running. And as I said, the more you get to know me, you will understand the credibility behind me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go back to the back corner over here.
My name is Michael Marmorio, and I have a question for all candidates. How much money are you getting from developers for your campaign?
It's a real question. Very good. Thank you, Michael. Zero. I had my commitment last year, no developer money. I hope every candidate can make that pledge here tonight.
I have not solicited any donations from developers. I have no interest in that. I have not accepted any money from developers. My campaign is entirely funded by grassroots members of our community and across the city, people who I've gotten to know through my work, on organizing on different issues, who've gotten the chance to see me in action. It's neighbors like yourselves. So absolutely not a panic.
Thanks. Taking money for developers or corporates are illegal, basically. But even a personal donation is not what we have solicited. It's all of my money that we have raised is through community members, our donors from that who I've worked with in the past, and across the city and across the province of Ontario.
So I'll put it this way. I have friends that own hotels. I have friends that are developers. Now, I've asked anyone that I personally know for a donation, because legally I can ask that. I can even ask that from you. So I have grassroots donors. I have donors that are developers. I have donors that are corporate executives. But again, legally, it has to be their personal checks. So I've followed all the political, legal obligations. So I don't know who has donated so far. The statements will be publicly out. You guys can go and spend your time on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, as I said, I'm not here to lie and get your votes. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. No back and forth, please. Very back over here, fellow, I think you have a red vest, perhaps?
My name is Alan Burt. I've already asked most of you this question, but I'd like to have it on record, if you don't mind. Sure. I'm very often at Committee of Adjustment hearings where applications for to have additions or extensions to your home. Now, the committee, the COA is supposed to be an impartial group where they evaluate the applications and then they vote as to whether or not they are to be approved or not. Now, in very rare occasions, it ranges now from about 0 to 2% that they will actually refuse applications in Scarborough. So that's about a 98% acceptance rate.
Okay.
In the rare occasion where they do refuse, would you as councillor go to the council and put forward a motion to appoint a city lawyer and land use planner to support the COA refusal when it goes to TLAB, the Toronto Local Appeal?
That's a long question. Jeez.
Thank you for that question, Alan. It would depend on the circumstances, but yes, that is something I would support. I've got a track record. When I was a trustee of the Toronto District School Board, I moved our board to have legal representation at OLT to oppose the Lenmore Court demoviction. So I've got a track record of doing that and standing up for community interest instead of developer greed.
I appreciate the question, and I think it will depend on the context. I don't think I can make a blanket commitment that every single time that'll happen. There's some cases where it might make sense, but maybe not every case, and I can't make that promise right now.
For me, it's going to be a case-to-case after reviewing. Thank you.
So with 2% roughly that has been turned off, sent back, so putting in cities' resources in most of the cases might be a waste of time, and I'm going to look into it case by case, but at the end of the day, the reality is the court has the judge and to be based our resources on it.
Okay, now.
I'm going to try and squeeze 2 more questions in, but squeeze, I really mean squeeze here. So you're going to have 30 seconds each to respond, gentlemen, okay? Because we want to give you a good time for your 1-minute closing statement, and we want to respect everyone's time here as well. So let me see some hands. Okay, I'm going to go to this gentleman right here in the front. A very brief question, sir.
Okay, I presume Ron or you, Jonathan, could discuss this further considering what Trevor asked.
Is there a question?
Yes. Would it be possible for those 2 gentlemen to state, being that MD next to me and Walayat and Peter and Reginald are here, what happened?
Is this a question of the candidates, sir?
Why the other candidates?
Because that's what we're here for. Jonathan, we can move on to another question. Thank you. This fellow here.
Okay, this is in relation to the young lady over there. My question is this: if any of you are elected, will you propose the restoring of 45 women's shelters, homeless shelters that are proposed and turned down by John Hurst tenor?
Good question.
Yeah. The question is, if you get elected, would you propose the restoration of 45 women's shelters, safe houses, homeless shelters that was turned down by John Hurst tenor?
30 seconds. Kevin, you can go first.
John Ford, is that?
Yeah,
yes,
during
I
his
mean, the
tenure.
housing crisis is impacting people at all different levels, and the city is responsible for shelters, supportive housing. There's a whole slew of things. Absolutely, people are ending up on the streets, in our parks. The city absolutely has a responsibility to make sure that there are places for people to have a roof over their head, even if it's in the short term with shelters. So absolutely.
45 turned down.
The answer is, for immediate need, yes, we need it, and it will be. However, we can't just stop there. We need permanent solutions and long-term solutions need to work together, not just a Band-Aid.
Malik?
So I agree, and I will work towards restoring them, but I would also push the federals and the province to put in their funding where it's needed most. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the question's a no-brainer, of course, yes. The other question is, why isn't the city moving now? There's a new administration. And the third piece to Malik's point, being non-aligned politically is so important. If we want to be active councillors that are making impact, being aligned politically hurts your ability to advocate and work. We have a provincial NDP, MPP, we've got a federal cabinet Liberal minister. We need to advocate for that funding. You're only taken seriously if you're representing the people, not a representative of the party.
All right, last question of the night. Before closing statements, I'm going to go back here. I think you haven't asked a question yet, have you, sir? Okay.
Just the panel, what would you be willing to do to stop high-speed stunt driving on city streets? And also on drag racing, pickup trucks, high performance pickup trucks, drag racing in St. Clair past 2 churches and school. Okay, so what would the candidates, what could you do, please?
Thank you, sir, for that question. I was the first candidate to come out in support of speed cameras. You can have all the signage and calming measures, but you only ding people in the wallet, you'll change behavior. So fully supportive of that.
There are a couple of things. First is enforcement. There needs to be proper enforcement and mechanism to enforce. But also, I think the question is, who have demonstrated in this community have demonstrated that traffic calming measures are needed and it works. Because it's not only just enforcement. So both needs to happen together to have a safer street.
Thank you, Malik.
So I agree with what my colleagues here stated. We need both speed cameras and enforcement. Both of them have to go hand in hand. You can't have one and win the other. Thank you.
Very good. And Kevin?
So I live off of Kingston Road. I see some of that very same street racing. I can hear it overnight. People treat it like it's the 401. The city waits till somebody gets killed before anything is changed. I think that is totally unacceptable. A big part of how I got involved at City Hall was through advocacy on pushing for safer streets. We only have 3 speed cameras in the entirety of our ward. I've been long pushing for more of them. They're 90% effective in getting people to stop speeding in front of them, but they are still a Band-Aid. The fundamental root of this is that we have roads that look and feel like highways. The fact that you can hit 100 or 150 kilometers an hour on Kingston Road, that's the problem. We need to make sure we're redesigning our streets so they are 21st century urban streets, not 20th century highways that are cutting our community apart.
Right. Very good. Now, I'm going to give you folks about a minute or so to regroup and just get your closing remarks in order. Again, we're going to go in the opposite order that you gave your opening remarks. And while they think about that and stew on that little bit, I want to thank you all for coming. This is a big commitment to sit here for 2 hours and sit here patiently and quietly, and I really appreciate that. They appreciate that, and the person sitting next to you appreciates that as well. I do want to have a little bit of an applause for the organizers of this event. Yes. These folks and others, they worked very hard, and it's very important for them that the voice is heard from the public. And I believe all of these people are sincere in their belief as well, and the other candidates in the audience as well. It's a big commitment to run for a council seat, and I respect what you're all trying to do here, and I wish you all well in coming days. It's an experience. The volunteers as well, the other volunteers, can I have an applause for them? And sometimes thank you very much. So, I'm going to move to the closing remarks first here. And closing remarks, Suman, you went 4th last time, so you begin.
You have 1 minute and you've got 30-second time.
Thank you for the opportunity. This election, that is this weekend and on Thursday, it is your chance to elect a candidate who just doesn't give sound bites, who's not a career politician who just runs. It is your time to choose who's actually committed to this community and who can actually hit the ground running in City Hall and has the City Hall experience. And that is important, and that differentiates me from any other candidates running with my experience. So I hope I'm going to count on your support, and thank you the organizers for doing such a fantastic job for all the 3 events that you did.
What I fear most in this election is that whoever makes it to that seat in City Hall will not be strong or independent enough to lead change for our ward. Because when all is said and done, whatever happens, all of us here, my wife, my daughter, our community, will be relying on that person to advocate for us. When I chaired the hiring committee for the Director of Education, my former board's one employee, there wasn't a single night that I couldn't feel the responsibility of that role on my shoulders. I believe I was given that responsibility because I developed a reputation for the strong and independent leadership that was required to make such a long-lasting and impactful decision. During COVID, our most precarious and sensitive time for education, I held frequent Zoom meetings to understand the very serious concerns parents had, brought in the right decision makers, and advocated. Our families need someone at City Hall who is on our side, Scarborough Southwest side. With your support, I can be that person. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out tonight and for all the conversations on the door and putting up with the election. By this time next week, we'll know who our next city councillor is. I can remind you all about my background in cities engineering and doing work in transportation and land use and infrastructure. I can talk about my long history of advocacy and safer streets and better transit, and I can talk about my personal commitment to the community, living here, raising my family here with my partner, how much I care about wanting to see a better future. But the reality is that this is a city where we are struggling with some real issues around being able to keep a roof over your head and getting around and feeling safe. All of these are things we can do better on, but it means we need to leave behind the past. We need to, the same style of leadership and thinking that's gotten us to this point is not going to be what gets us forward. We need a new generation of leaders, and we have a rare opportunity as a community with an open seat to say, you know what, it is time for a new generation of leaders, and to say, let's actually build a better future. And we can do that together. Thank you.
I would like to thank the organizers, the volunteers for putting this great night together. I'd also like to thank everyone that's here tonight, both in person and joining us virtually. Thank you for spending the 2 hours with us, listening to our ideas and that of my colleagues. I am passionate. I've lived here. I've been asked from my friends, why don't I run elsewhere? But guess what? I live here, and I'm passionate about doing good in this neighborhood for myself, for my kids, for our future, and for our seniors. I would only recommend and urge one thing: please educate yourself, and then whoever you think is the best candidate, vote for that. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Folks, tonight's 4 candidates. Thank you very much. So, I do have one more task for you, and I need you to pick up your paddles for one last question. Gentlemen. So, the question to you is, will you be staying around for the next few minutes to answer further questions?
Better be a yes.
Good answer. The hall will be open for a while, and there's about a 20-minute or so question period going forward.